The professional baseball community was thrown out of whack when a strange relief pitcher named Pat Venditte was drafted by the San Francisco Giants in 2008. While Venditte seemed like a relatively normal and nice guy, many folks in the baseball community, specifically umpires, were not too fond of the way he played the game. It's not that he was walking around with his pants sagging, flipping young fans the bird, or breaking any of the unwritten rules that baseball's old guard hold dear. Rather, it's that he could and would pitch with both hands, and the league decided they had to do something about this seemingly extraordinary advantage before it bit them in the backside.
You're going to see a shot of him switching hands, going from the left side, putting the glove on the other hand. That's kind of odd.
Wow.
This was far from the first or last time that baseball's rules had to be altered or updated because of one player or a single play in a game. Whether it's a dirty slide, a shattered ankle, or an agonizingly slow pitching pace, there have been numerous instances of MLB rules having to get changed because of what one player or a group of players did on the field. In this video, we'll explain some of the most iconic times that changed the rules of the game forever. Let's begin by getting back to Pat. As Venditte began his ascent through the minor leagues and inched closer to Major League Baseball, umpires realized that there was no rule in place to keep him from switching his glove hand in the middle of his windup and hurling a pitch from the third base side when the hitter was expecting it to come from the first base side. Because a switch hitter can't move over to the other batter's box while a pitcher is rearing to throw, which wouldn't make sense for them to do in the first place, the Professional Baseball Umpire Corporation decided that it wasn't fair what Venditte was doing. So they instituted new guidelines that stated the pitcher must visually indicate to the umpire, batter and runners which way he will begin pitching to the batter. In addition, the guidelines, which were later adopted by MLB and unofficially called the Pat Venditte rule, added that after one pitch is thrown, the pitcher and batter may each change positions a single time per at-bat.
Once he makes up his mind which hand he's going to switch, then the batter can choose.
Many believed that this wonky rule set wasn't fair to Venditte, who was merely making the most out of the gifts that God granted him. Regardless, Venditte still made it to the MLB in 2015 and appeared in 62 career MLB games, proving that this rule change couldn't keep him down. Speaking of being kept down, one player's ruthless decision when heading toward home plate forced a rule change that required all MLB players to stay down in future situations. But before we dive into this iconic moment, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more baseball deep dives. In 2011, when the defending World Series champion San Francisco Giants played a home game against the Florida Marlins, in the 12th inning of a 6-6 game, a Marlins hitter flied a pitch to right field. Upon the catch, Marlins outfielder Scott Cousins tagged and headed home, hoping to break the tie. While he broke the tie, Cousins also broke a bone in star catcher Buster Posey's leg when barreling into him at home plate. Posey was in immediate agony, and Cousins became public enemy #1 among the Giants fan base. Was the hate warranted? Kinda, yeah. In addition to breaking a bone in his leg, Posey also suffered 3 torn ligaments in his ankle and would miss the rest of that 2011 season as a result. This was the last straw in a decades-long argument about whether players should be able to get into collisions with the catcher at home plate. And soon after, a new rule was instituted in Major League Baseball that stated, a runner attempting to score may not deviate from his direct pathway to the plate in order to initiate contact with the catcher or any player covering home plate. The catcher is also not allowed to block the runner's pathway, and if they do, the runner will automatically be called safe. And with that, the arguably most violent and exciting aspect of base running was outlawed and will likely never be seen in an MLB game again. The good news is that Buster Posey returned fully healthy during the 2012 season when he won the NL MVP award and led the Giants to another World Series title. Another MVP with the Giants who forced a rule change in his career is the legendary Barry Bonds. And no, we're not talking about his alleged usage of performance-enhancing drugs, although that could also be included in this video. Instead, we're talking about what Bonds wore up to the plate. Bonds has surgery on his right arm before his MLB career began. As a result, he always wore some sort of padding on his right elbow, since him being a left-handed hitter made it so this elbow was facing the pitcher and thus susceptible to getting hit by a pitch. This wasn't a problem for the first few seasons of Bonds' career, since his elbow guards were rather innocuous. But this changed around the 1995 season, when Bonds began wearing protective gear on his elbow that looked more like something a medieval knight would wear riding into battle than something a baseball player would need. These elbow guards kept ballooning in size through the end of the century, and because Bonds' iconic batting stance had this elbow essentially wiggling over the strike zone, he got hit much more while wearing it. Eventually, Major League Baseball officials decided that enough was enough and made a rule change that stated hitters will no longer be allowed to wear large body armor. All that will be allowed is a 10-inch pad issued by Major League Baseball. Any exceptions will be considered only with a physician's written request. While this was supposed to be a crackdown on Bonds, the MLB Home Run King got the last laugh because his aforementioned elbow surgery made it easy for him to get a doctor's note. Therefore, Bonds and several other players around the league were allowed to wear these gigantic elbow guards for the rest of their careers. How about that? The rule changes we've discussed to this point have all related to the San Francisco Giants, but we'll balance this out because our next two rule changes have to do with their arch rival, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Wait, have you not subscribed yet? Make sure to do so if you want to keep expanding your baseball lore knowledge. The Dodgers didn't become one of Major League Baseball's most despised teams just because of their sustained dominance and extraordinary ability to attract Japan's best players to their team. The team has had a couple of questionable moments in recent years that not only prompted rule changes, but made the guilty players some of MLB's most wanted. One example of this is what longtime Phillies superstar Chase Utley, who took full advantage of another one of MLB's controversial base running rules during a 2015 NLDS game against the New York Mets. Utley was on first base when in a 2-1 game in the bottom of the 7th inning. A ball was hit back up the middle before getting gloved by Mets second baseman Daniel Murphy, who underhanded it to shortstop Ruben Tejada, who was facing towards center field when receiving the toss. Utley slid into second base a moment after Tejada received the ball. Well, he didn't actually slide into second base, and instead slid right into Tejada about a foot to the right of the bag. Tejada did a near backflip after being upended and ultimately broke his leg as a result of Utley's dirty slide, which he did to ensure a double play couldn't occur so Los Angeles could score the runner on third and tie the game. Whatever it takes to win, or whatever they say. The umpires ruled the slide legal. However, Utley ended up receiving a 2-game suspension, and the next year, MLB instituted a new rule that stated runners will be called for interference and declared out if the runner intentionally initiates contact with the fielder by elevating or kicking his legs, initiates a roll block, changes his pathway to the base, or slides past the base when attempting a slide. How is that not already a rule? Kind of crazy, right? Well, when asked about his role in this new rule change, Utley asserted that the rule has been in the works for some time and that it wasn't solely due to him. While that may be true, history calling this the Utley slide rule will forever link his Bush League play to it. While our next Dodgers-related rule change may not be as dangerous as Utley's slide, MLB fans would argue it was even more necessary because of how boring it made watching the game. Full disclosure, this next rule is definitely not owed solely to the player we're using as an example, but he's the best proof that it was necessary. We're talking about the MLB pitch clock rule that was instituted after the 2022 MLB season. This rule included a 30-second timer between batters, a 15-second timer with the bases empty, and a 20-second timer with runners on, which was reduced to 18 seconds before the 2024 season. While there are various minor details regarding this rule, the most important are that the pitcher must begin his motion to deliver the pitch before the expiration of the pitch timer. Pitchers who violate the timer are charged with an automatic ball, and batters who violate the timer are charged with an automatic strike. Nobody would have been more affected by this rule than Dodgers relief pitcher Pedro Baez, who earned the nickname the Human Rain Delay for taking agonizingly long to pitch the ball to home plate. For example, Baez averaged 32.7 seconds per pitch with runners in base during the 2015 season, which was 3 seconds longer than the second worst offender. By the 2016 season, national news and broadcasters had caught on to Baez's reputation and would often place pitch clocks on the broadcast to see how long it would take him to throw the damn ball. While this was meant as some added entertainment amid these lulls in action, it brought attention to a long-standing debate about whether a pitch clock needed to be brought to the game. While it eventually was, Baez never had to use it because his final MLB season came in 2022, after a year in which he accrued a brutal 11.57 ERA in a couple appearances with the Houston Astros. Maybe Baez had heard about the impending pitch clock and was more worried about that than executing pitches. Another relief pitcher that absolutely had a MLB rule change because of them is former Miami Marlins pitcher Carter Capps, who caused a ton of controversy back in 2015 with his iconically funky delivery to the plate. While Capps' throwing motion was normal for the first half of his delivery, when it came time for him to throw the actual pitch, Capps took a second hop step toward home plate that, at its peak, made it so he released the ball with his foot over 18 inches away from the rubber, where every other pitcher's feet would be. Capps already could touch 100 miles per hour, but with the pitch coming in from that much closer, it looked much faster for the hitters who struggled to do anything against the young pitcher. In fact, this likely made it look like Capps' fastball was the hardest pitch thrown in MLB history. And his success is proven by Capps producing a 1.16 ERA and an insane 58 strikeouts during just 31 innings pitched. While Capps' unique hop step wasn't technically illegal at the time, many felt like he was receiving an unfair advantage because of the timing issues it afforded hitters and that he was simply throwing the ball from closer than was supposed to be allowed in the same. In fact, in a 2015 article, baseball legend David Ortiz called Capps one of the 5 toughest pitchers he's ever faced, grouping him with Hall of Famers like Mariano Rivera, David Martinez, and Mike Mussina. But Capps' success would prove short-lived after MLB instituted another change before the 2017 season that stated, "A pitcher may not take a second step toward home plate with either foot or otherwise reset his pivot foot in his delivery of the pitch. If there is at least one runner on base, such an action will be called a balk. If the bases are unoccupied, then it will be considered an illegal pitch." While Capps and the San Diego Padres, who he was pitching for at the time, tried to fight this rule by trying to find loopholes, it was clear that this new rule was meant for him specifically and the league wasn't going to budge. Therefore, Capps had to take the hop out of his delivery, and his ERA suffered because of it, pitching in only 12.1 innings and amassing a 6.57 ERA. That was the last time Capps pitched in the MLB. There's an argument to be made that all of these rule changes helped MLB to ensure that eccentricity, excitement, and individuality were not going to run rampant in the game, which would hold true to the old-school, traditionalist notion of America's pastime. Then again, many of these rule changes were in order to make the game less dangerous, and nobody wants to see a leg or ankle get broken on live TV. Well, nobody should want to see that. But the bottom line with these various rule changes is that even if someone managed to find a loophole with something, the MLB always seems to get the last laugh. That is, unless your name is Barry Bonds, who got away with elbow armor and suspected steroid use. Good for you, Barry.